Good evening everyone, it's Cllr Paul Wray here with my weekly Ask Paul live session. The video has just started bang on 6:30, so I'm just going to leave it about a minute to 2 minutes to allow people to join the video. So please do make yourself comfortable, and then we'll get on with the quick updates about what's happening in the area and the city, and then I'll start taking some of the questions that you're giving me and some of the questions that have been sent to me in advance. So as I said, we'll leave it just about 60 seconds just for people to join in, and then we'll get going. So I'll just be a moment, get my live feed ready so I can pick up your comments as they come through. Let's have a look. Videos, that's what I want. So while we are waiting for people to join, I hope you've had a good week as best as possible. Obviously it's challenging times at the moment, and I think it's fair to say that after nearly 7 weeks of the current situation, we're obviously probably all bearing a large degree of stress. Hello Brenda, thank you for joining the feed. Good to see you back, because I know you couldn't join us last week. Okay, we've got about 6 more people, so I'm just going to give it another 30 seconds and then we'll kick off, as I said, with some local updates and some updates about what's going on in the city. As I said, then we'll do some of those questions that have been sent to me in advance, and then we'll take some of the live questions as they start coming through. So hello Karen, thank you and welcome to the feed. Let's have a look, give it... Right, it's about 2 minutes now, so what we'll do is we'll get started. So, just kind of give you some overview of where we are as a city in terms of our response to COVID, some quick local updates, and as I said, we'll do those questions. So, I'm going to read out from a bit of a report that was given to the council's executive board. So, so far we've had an extra 35,000 claimants for universal, so we had 35,000 claimants for universal credit before COVID. We've had 17,000 extra people apply for universal credit since the virus outbreak and response from the 16th of March, so an absolutely massive increase. We've had 3,500 residents request a deferment of their council tax. So if we've said in previous videos, those that are unable to cover their payment of the council tax or get council tax benefit to cover what they can't afford, we have actually already applied 3,500 deferments. We've helped 1,700 people claim additional council tax payments. Now in terms of our helpline, this is the number where people call us if they need assistance or food referrals. We've had, since the 16th of March, we've had 7,700 calls. We've delivered, as of the 16th of March, from the 16th of March, 10,000 food packages in the city, and we're now averaging around 1,100 a day. So obviously there's been quite a big uplift. And we've issued around £70,000 worth of food donations and £62,000 worth of shopping vouchers to supermarkets. So as you can probably see, that's an absolutely massive increase in support to people. More support's going out, as you probably heard from the government. We are looking at probably in the next couple of weeks the beginning of the phasing back to some form of normality, but I think it's fair to say, and be honest with everyone, it isn't going to happen anytime soon. In some other local updates, it's pretty much as it was last week. Nothing really major has changed. So I'm going to start picking up some of the questions in the feed and some of the questions that have been sent to me in advance. So let's have a look. I've got 2 questions here, one from Michael and one from Gareth, pretty much on the same council tax and rent holidays. So what we're saying as a council, I think I've said this in previous weeks, is where people who can afford their rent and council tax, because they may be on salary, so persons like me and my household, we're asking obviously for them to continue to pay. Where people are financially struggling, so maybe a partner's gone to furlough or they've been made redundant and they've gone statutory sick, etc. We're asking them to contact the housing officer if they're a leased housing tenant about the rent, or council, the call centre about their council tax. We'll look at the situation. For some of those people, we'll be able to get them council tax benefit to cover the gap. For some people, that won't work, and we'll then start looking at payment deferrals, effectively payment holidays until they're back into a better financial position. As I've said, just quickly from that report I just read out, we have done quite a significant number of those already. 1,700 extra people have got council tax support, and we've done quite a lot of payment deferrals. So where we can do, we are doing, but we are being very highly specific about where we send that support and advice. Yeah, I mean, it's always worth a try, Michael, but like I say, we are trying to be as directed as we possibly can. Sarah, dentist, I did put an update on my Facebook page yesterday about this, actually. So, as people beware, dentists aren't taking appointments. They're doing a triage system where effectively they ring up to the dentist, they give them some advice and basically say whether or not they need assistance, but they're not doing face-to-face. Now, the emergency dentist service is meant to be going live, or should have gone live this week. We've not had confirmation it has. Once that confirmation comes through, there were basically the hold-up was personal protective equipment. As you can imagine, dentistry is a very highly contact type of medical intervention. You're literally down someone's throat. So if you will, they have to get the right personal protective equipment. They are going to get that now, and they should be launching, hopefully, I'm hoping by the beginning of next week at the latest, the actual emergency dental service here in Leeds. If you just bear with me 2 seconds, I just need to go check on something at my door. I'll be literally 2 seconds. A bit weird, but I'm just going to have to go double check something. 1 second. Really sorry about that. I just had to go check something, and I may need to go in a hurry, actually, just to look after a member of my household. So going back to some of the questions, so again, apologies for that. Let's have a look. Post office. If there's a post office anymore, why do people have to queue? Actually, Sarah, I don't know why that is in relation to the post office in terms of queuing. I wasn't aware of that. I will pick that up for you in due course. So I really wasn't aware of that question, so we'll come back to that. Let's have a look. Another question via Facebook. So I got this one earlier today via message. About parking on Dewsbury Road. Let me just go through it a bit. From others, isn't there? Okay, so think about social distancing and Dewsbury Road, and I think this is a general one about parking, about how you make sure there's social distancing. I'm actually not quite sure, Jane, how we would do that, and I think it's something I will pick up with our parking team. I suppose the difficulty is if people are parking on the street, we can't monitor it constantly, and I don't know how you would segregate the road. There are specific rules around how you mark roads and footpaths, which are set in legislation, and there requires something called a traffic regulation order to amend those arrangements. So I think I would probably need to pick that up with highways to figure out if there was a way around it without breaching the law. But I do get your point about if people are parking up, and obviously the length of cars, actually the social distancing is difficult, and how you get to shops, etc. It's a bit of a weird one in that sense. Hello Simon, thank you for joining the feed. Let's have a look. Are there any other questions? It's quite quiet tonight, so apparently not a lot of burning questions for me. let's have a look. Anything else coming through? Just having a look at Twitter. Nothing on there. Nothing on Facebook at the moment. Let's have a look. Nothing there. So yeah, no other questions so far. So I don't really know what to update you on if you're not asking me anything. Which might make this a very short Q&A session. So are there any other burning questions or concerns? Can be on absolutely anything. It doesn't need to be about the virus. It could be about something in your community. It could be about a project. It could be an idea. Anything you'd like to ask me? Because I'm here waiting. No? Right, well, while I'm waiting for... Testing has changed again. Yes, Michael, it has. So, this is a bit of a complicated one because the lead system is slightly different to the national system, which is now catching up. So for a while in Leeds we were doing testing for care home staff and relatives, as well as the testing site at Temple Green, which was initially only for key workers, but it's now an appointment system where you can book if you're in the categories of people that need testing. The government has now said that they are going to do that on a national level. The council's keeping its provision in place for the moment until we're confident that the national regime has caught up. But effectively the testing regime has widened. Slightly sceptical on whether or not we've got to 100,000 tests, as the government is claiming. About 50,000 of those are test kits that have been sent out today. So they've not actually been tested, but obviously the testing regime is increasing. In terms of the areas I cover, Michael, I cover the Leeds City Centre from Wellington Street and Boar Lane down. I cover LS11 in terms of Beeston Hill, the bottom end of Beeston Hill, which used to be considered as part of Hunslet, the Hunslet Moor area, which is the Longroyds, the Garnets, the Oakleys, and then all of Hunslet. So it's quite a large area. Registered electorate is about 16,700. Actual population is closer to 30,000 people, and they're obviously very, very diverse groups. Simon, when schools open, will they be giving face masks to children? Honest answer, don't know. I think the government is now heavily hinting that as part of their phased return to normality, that schools will be one of the first places to open, and they are now heavily hinting that face masks will probably be required. Now, whether that actually is at the supply chain where that can happen, as we've seen with personal protective equipment, it's been really difficult. And I think, you know, the scandal, particularly in social care and care homes, I think we've got over 30 care homes now that have cases of coronavirus here in Leeds. It's terrifying, to put it politely. But I think the government is very heavily angling towards that now. And if they do that, then they're obviously going to have to get supplies up and running. But I think it's safe to say that schools are going to be one of the first places that return back to normality when this all begins. So we'll have to see what arrangements come out from the government when they do that. Yeah, you're right, Michael. Care workers can be tested now without symptoms. Before they were only doing people with symptoms. It's now asymptomatic as well, so where they don't have symptoms. This doesn't seem to have got to all the care homes by the sounds of it, and so there is a bit of a message drive, but I have picked up from people I know that this hasn't actually got out to everyone, which is incredibly concerning. Yeah, I picked this up as well, Michael, about whether kids will be fined if they don't go to school. I know that as a council we've sent a request already about this, because it is a bit of a concerning one. I think there's this idea that everybody wants to go back to normality straight away, and I think that's a very bad interpretation of where the public is. I think there's a lot of scared people, and absolutely rightly so. This virus has responded in ways people weren't expecting. There's going to be behavioural changes. I think we're going to find there's going to be a lot of people that are really, really worried. An example I will give is there's a lot of people that have cars who maybe get the bus to work. Well, actually, until this virus is under control, are you going to want to get into a bus when you're in a confined space, when you can be in your own private car and feel much safer? And that also can have an impact on our road network. So there's a whole set of behavioural changes I don't think they've considered, and I don't think the public is in a rush at the moment to want to get back to normality. That being said, we're going to have to get to some form of normality or new norm at a certain point, and I think a lot of the work that's now happening in council is around actually what does returning to normal look like. Are we going to have people who are under the shielding scheme shielded for maybe 18 months to 2 years at government request? How do we engage them in services? How do we open services up? How do we give people confidence to use services? Do we have confidence in those services being opened up? I think a good example is as well the government's request to reopen recycling sites recently. All well good on paper, but actually there are serious practical issues that need to be addressed around how do you keep social distancing, how do you make sure the stuff coming in is clean and tidy, what impact does that have on staffing numbers. So I don't think we're anywhere near any sense of return to normality or anything like that, but those plans need to start being made. But going back to the original question, I think schools will be some of the first places to reopen, probably in a phased manner. I think the government will probably come out and recommend face masks, but I don't think they've got the capacity there yet to actually get anywhere near the supply that would be needed domestically. Yeah, Nicola, I think you raise a very, very similar point in terms of worry and concern about people going home and going to work and school and stuff like that. I think we're in for a really interesting time with the government wanting one thing and actually the public wanting a different. Again, Sarah, as you said, I think it's going to be really difficult that actually a lot of people are going to change their habits and behaviour after this to try and deal with their own social anxieties and understandable social anxieties. This virus is a killer. Let's not pretend that it's not. It is. We don't know what its long-term impacts are going to be. And I think we probably have to be honest, we're going to live with this virus probably for the next couple of years in some form or another, depending on the regime we put in place to try and deal with it. Yeah, Simon, McDonald's is going to reopen. I'm not quite sure how, whether they're going to do an order service. So some takeaway fast food providers are going to delivery service only. Some are saying they may do their driving services. McDonald's hasn't really announced how it's going to do that. Now, I don't go to McDonald's very often, to be absolutely polite, so I'm not a regular customer. But I don't know if they're going to go to a driving model, delivery only model. It's going to be really interesting. Sarah, on your point about inconsistencies across policies, I think this is a really fair point. I think there is a huge amount of inconsistency. I think the government, to a certain extent, is responding as quickly as it can to changing circumstances, political pressure, scientific pressure as to what to do. And actually at the moment we're in a really simple stage where actually the advice is stay at home unless you need to go out for one of those 4 reasons, and we're finding it difficult to manage with that. So once we do go to a much more complicated scenario where there's differing returns to normality, I think it's going to get very, very, very complicated. Yeah, Brenda, I think I think your point about people feeling uncomfortable about going out when the government starts to release the lockdown is completely valid, and I think there's a lot of people, as I've said earlier in the video, that think that everybody's going to be eager to get outside all of a sudden. It's going to be great and wonderful, and we're going to get back to some form of normality really quickly. I don't think that's going to be the case, and I actually think we need to be honest. There's going to be a lot of very, very scared people. and there's going to be a lot of social anxiety, there's going to be a lot of fear, and how we actually address and support people during that is, I don't know the answer to that at the moment, and I think everybody's trying to figure out how we do that. I'm also expecting personally, and this is just a personal view, that there will be a considerable amount of issues. So for example, we know that people aren't contacting the NHS now for things like cancer treatment, normal kind of things if the kids are unwell, etc. That's being pent up in the system. That's going to release and cause problems. We know that there are lots of issues that people would normally report that aren't being reported. There's probably going to be an absolute avalanche of mental health related issues off the back of this, as well as the economic instability, the hardship, etc. It's not going to be a simple return to any form of normality. Mike, I think the question about what type of recovery we're going to have is going to be interesting. I personally do think we're going to have a very sharp recession. I think that's without a shadow of a doubt. The IFS, Institute for Financial Studies, has basically said, I think their last assessment that or maybe it was the Office for Budget Responsibility, that we've had a 35% reduction in our GDPR. Now the question will be, is this like a normal financial recession where actually, as with the 2008 recession, it's taken well over a decade to get back to where we were, and in economic terms we're barely above where we were in 2008? Or is it going to be really painful and then a very, very sharp recovery? Do I think that we're going to be in a good economic state at the due date to leave the European Union? No. I think there probably will be conversations around how that works in practice. I have a feeling the government is probably playing politics at the moment, understandably so, about still leaving at the end of the year. I think reality may say something different when we get to that. In terms of the financial loss to the council, Sarah, our latest estimates, it's cost us £130 million in a mixture of responding, so extra spending, lost council tax revenue, lost business rates revenue, and a variety of other things. We've so far had confirmation of about 22 million. I think the figure may have got closer to 30 something million in terms of assistance back. So we're probably looking at a 90 to 100 million pound gap at the moment in terms of returning back to some form of financial stability. The government did promise that we wouldn't lose a single penny. Whether that happens reality, we will see. Some of the soundings haven't been good, is the honest answer. And from a council perspective, if we lose 90 to 100 million pounds, that's your services. And actually, we're going to have to think about how we deal with that, if that is the case. Innocent, the double yellow lines on Lady Pit Lane and Beeston Hill. So, this has come about, if anyone knows Beeston Hill and where St Francis Primary School is, and Lady Pit Lane goes around the corner, there's some zigzag lines for the school to stop parking going on there for the kids, but it's a rather, it's not sharp, but it's not a great corner, and we have had parents parking actually on the corner to drop the kids off. So what we're proposing is some relatively modest double yellow lines to clear up that junction, just to keep that sight line. So it should clear up the sight line, making it safer to pass, but we've restricted the amount of double yellow lining so that we don't have a lot of what we call parking displacement, because actually every metre and a half to 2 metres you take away of road space, that's one less car, they end up parking somewhere else. So I think it's a balancing act, Innocent. There will still be plenty of space there, but we have tried to limit it as much as possible, because we were getting quite serious complaints of near accidents, and actually to a certain extent it was actually quite dangerous for the kids, because if you know the geography of Beeston Hill, they're coming down from the Greenmount Estates. That's a natural crossing point over the road because they have sight in both directions. If there are parked cars there, then they have to stick their head out, and it's about getting that balance. But the parking displacement should be a couple of cars at most. It shouldn't be more than that. They've done them where it's absolutely necessary for safety, and not much more beyond that. Yeah, Karen, I think this is an interesting one about the face mask question again. If we are... See, I don't think the government will instruct us to wear face masks. I think what the government will do is suggest very heavily that you should do, which obviously gives them the space of saying, well, actually, go get it yourself. I think if the government is suggesting that this becomes mandatory, there is a cost involved in this, and actually they should pay for it and send it out. I don't think they will, and I think this is where the supply problem becomes a really significant issue. And I just don't think we're going to get an answer on that for weeks, is the honest answer. And actually also a cost burden. If the government is insisting that people buy them themselves, well, obviously there's the supply chain, there's the cost involved when people's incomes and they drop by 20% or more if they're on the furlough scheme, or both partners have lost an income, or they've got additional costs. There's a whole minefield there that I don't think they've conceived, and this is why I think they've been very resistive at the moment of saying about the face masks until they think they've got a credible answer in place. I personally feel they will probably say, we recommend you go buy one, or they'll do demonstration videos about how to make your own at home with a scarf or something. I don't know. I think it's going to be a very interesting one when it does come up. Yes, Michael, on the M621 between junction 5 and 7, for I think it's 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to restrict the anti-clockwise traffic to one lane. This is to try and basically do the barrier work. I mean, I've literally just got an email about it just before the start of this from Highways England. Let me just see if it is still in my inbox. It is not, because I haven't updated my inbox on my computer since starting this, but I'll put another update about that. They are going to restrict it for the sound barrier works. The idea being that they're going to try and restrict it as much as possible to try and stop it going into late night works where possible, because there's lots of residents around there. I'll get a further update when I've read the second email I've had about it, if that's okay, and I'll put that to my Facebook. In terms of the churches, Sarah, I don't know is the honest answer. A lot of this is going to be dependent on how the government wants to release the pressure on the system. I mean, there are certain things I think we can do. I think bars and clubs are going to be very last on the list of reopening. I think larger social venues and social events are probably pretty much going to be off the table for most, if not all, of the year. I think as we start getting to religious institutions, I think the difficulty that is, we have a lot of house churches in a ward like this. We have a lot of madrasas, we have the mosques, we have the temples. They all have varying numbers of people that can attend. And the difficulty with that is, if you're saying you can't have a gathering, let's say they come out with 10 or less people you can have a gathering. Well, actually, that might say a house church can have a meeting, but actually a larger church or a mosque or something like that can't. I think what they'll probably do is probably do it sectorially, and by that I mean they'll go, this can open in this sector, this can then open in that sector, and they'll do it that way. But I think the honest answer is, and we don't have that guidance from the government yet, and I think that's what people are trying to get their head around now in terms of how would that practically work. Let's see if there's any questions I've missed. No, we've got that there, we've got that there. Let's see if there's any other questions anywhere else coming through. Let's have a look. Waste dumps. So yes, the government has said that they would like us to reopen our waste facilities. I know this is a thing that's on a lot of people's minds, because a lot of people have been doing DIY. And what we're looking at is how that is going to work. Now, there's actually been quite a lot of pushback from the local government association on this, because again, the general fear is social distancing. How do we maintain that? Dealing with household waste isn't a straightforward process. You know, we don't know what chemicals have been on it, etc., where it's come from. There are health and safety practicalities. So the honest answer is we're trying to assess it. Now, the government has given an indication, but they've not actually said effectively when or how. So it's one of these things where they're kind of prepping us, and we're trying to work out how it would work in practice. It may be that actually takes longer than the government wants. A lot of that will come down to how much pushback comes from the local government association back to ministers. Does that mean, Simon, does that mean football grounds will be shut and be let's open? Yes, again, this is the difficult, Simon. We don't know. I mean, the general theory is that open space is less contagious because obviously there's open space. But the difficulty actually is, and actually it was my partner that raised this to me, and I think it was actually a really valid point. Some research that's come from, I don't know if it's Denmark, I think he advised me, that actually social distancing at 2 meters works really well when you're walking. The problem is when you're running or doing physical activity, there's more sweat, there's less air involved effectively, and actually those social distancing measures actually need to expand if you're doing very vigorous activity, or at least that's what the research from Denmark has suggested. Now, I've got a feeling the government will probably say sporting events and institutions will probably be further down the list, and it may be what they say is very large ones like large football clubs and rugby clubs, etc., will probably be quite far down the list. I think community ones maybe slightly sooner because they are much more financial peril as well. But I think this is going to be one of those weird ones where they may say some can open sooner with restricted numbers and social distancing. Some larger ones will have to wait. I certainly think things like larger sporting events are probably off the table for a while. Smaller community ones might come back sooner, but actually we just don't know what the government or the rules are going to say about that. So it's one of those waiting to watch. I know as a ward we are sporting fanatics, be it rugby, cricket or football, so I know there's a lot of eagerness to get back out onto the pitch. Well, that's the point, Michael. How would football work with social distancing, or rugby for that matter? It's a really difficult one, and I think there's two elements to this. You can probably social distance a crowd, but how do you social distance the players? Is that an acceptable risk? And these are the questions. I mean, I don't know what the government's going to say. I don't think anyone does at the moment. And I think it's going to be a question of waiting to see their feedback. This is why I think probably, and this is just a personal opinion, probably sporting events and institutions will be much further down the list of returning to more normality. It's going to be a very strange one. Sarah, yeah, I know. I wasn't aware that that Ireland said that over 70s can now go out for exercise. I think the honest answer is, I am of the personal opinion that we need to wait to see what the scientists here in the UK say. I do know that's obviously some of the people under the shielding protocols have been advised not even to go to the gardens at the moment. So obviously a lot really depends on that person's health and the impact on their respiratory system. And actually, the virus is only really known to science for the last 130, 140 days. So we actually don't know a huge amount about its longevity, etc. So I think there's probably going to be a very cautious return to normality and a very cautious releasing, particularly for those people under the shielding scheme. And I think it's going to take us a while to get back to some form of normality. Let's have a look. Is there any more questions? Let's have a look. This one's coming via email about bins. So yes, litter bins. We're still asking people where possible not to use them. Appreciate that's not always great when you've got maybe a bag full of dog fouling and taking that back to your home bin when you've maybe not got a bin collection for 2 weeks. We are getting around them really, really slowly. So bins are getting emptied, but it's at an incredibly slow pace, and actually surprising, the demand for them has gone down, but they're still being used. So we're still asking people not to use the litter bins where possible, and Staffing levels are slowly returning to normal. I think we're about 20 to 30% down now compared to at the start of this when we were nearly 50% down on staff. But there are other services, particularly the heavy duty services like the refuge service, that still has quite a lot of sickness, and so we've still got staff supporting those services. Yeah, I think in terms of the, Michael, in terms of the elderly, I think it's certain groups of people, depending on the condition, that have been told not to. I think the majority of people can still go out and exercise, but I think there's a particular subset within the shielding group that have been very much told. I think they're around the realms of the people with very severe respiratory or immune system deficiencies. So if they're having any form of immune system depression, so if they've had a recent, say, cancer treatment, transplant, and their immune system is severely compromised. Let's have a look. What about opticians? I actually don't know, Sarah, what's happening with opticians. I'll email off about that and find out what's going on. You're the first person to ask me about that, and as someone who doesn't wear glasses, it's probably not the first thing I would think about, actually. Let's have a look. Thank you, Simon. I do try my best to do my work. Not always perfect, but I endeavour to try and do what I can, so thank you for that. Innocent, are there any COVID testing centres in Hunslet? No. The testing centre for Leeds is at the Temple Green Park and Ride, so there's not one been broken down. The government is going to be deploying some mobile testing sites as and where they need them, but that will be directed by Public Health England and the NHS. But the lead site is at Temple Green. If you are someone who's eligible for a test, key worker, care home, or family member of those people that work there, and you're asymptomatic or symptomatic, you can now book in a test. The capacity is increasing for that, so appointments are being relatively quick now compared to where they were. There were some initial issues about appointments just disappearing, but book it there, get to the park and ride, or is there some, I think it was Hillary called it park and test now, and essentially you book it in, go give the swab, they do what they need to do, they send it off for the test and you get your results back. I'm not quite sure how quick the results are back, but it's relatively quick because we have lab capacity in Leeds. But yeah, it's just via the Temple Green site at the moment, or in hospital testing if you've obviously been admitted to hospital. Let's have a look. Is there anything else coming through? Yes, that is, whoever's put that, that is just a collection of wires and mice on my sofa there. I didn't clean up clearly properly enough before the start of this. Oops. Yeah, next day appointment. I didn't realise it was that quick, Michael, so that's really good. I didn't realise it was next day appointments, so that's brilliant. And again, we are aware there are some people in the social care sector, particularly the home care sector, who aren't aware they can book a test because a lot of services are still working on that you have to show symptoms. If you work in those environments and you are asymptomatic, you can get a test now. Let's have a look. Did you manage to report the tree? I'm trying to remember which tree you're referring to, Sarah. I can't remember. I've reported quite a few trees in the last week. You'll have to remind me. Let's have a look. Anything else? This one's coming on via WhatsApp. Are you planning to do community meetings? So this has been a bit of a topic of debate, actually. I'm quite keen to start our residents' meetings again, but virtually. And I'm trying to negotiate with officers about having a license purchase so that we can organise those. I'm really keen that, I mean, there's two things I'm worried about. One, those people that will probably have to shield for a very, very long time, who are probably going to be excluded from the democratic process and the kind of community, how we engage them. And I think actually there's a lot more people online now. We've broken the barrier for many people around engaging via video, etc. So there's that group. And actually, just as a much better democratic exercise, I want to engage with more people. Not everybody wants to turn up to a community meeting even when we do get to Normality. So I am just in the process of working out how we will do this, which platform we will use, how it will work. And the idea would be is, whereas this is very much me just talking and you writing messages to me, I would have, like I would say for Hunslet Green, or Hunslet Moor, or Beeston Hill, I would have a sit-down residents meeting where people come and sit down and ask questions face-to-face. Effectively, we would do that via video conferencing. So I would probably be the chair. There would be someone basically managing the admin of the group as it happens. And essentially it would allow for actually residents to have that conversation together as well as we would do at a kind of traditional residents meeting, because actually sometimes some of the best ideas and questions actually come off people bouncing off each other, and this is something that's lost in this type of format. So I am working on that now, and hopefully if I can get some of the concerns sorted out, I would hope by middle of this month we would be announcing some of our first virtual community meetings where we can actually get that engagement level going again. There are security issues about stopping people hijacking the feed, etc, and etc, but it is something I'm ambitious to do. And I think when we do go back to Normality, I think there is a very serious point here about how we actually engage those people who don't want to come to meetings or who can't come to meetings, because if we have a meeting late at night it's dark, or if it's in winter it's cold, and actually about broadening in that democratic discussion and accountability, which I think for a variety of reasons we've not caught with technology, and people engage in different ways. The days of when I was a kid, which is blimey a long time ago now, I'm only 34 but it seems like a long time ago, where actually you only engage with your counsellor at their surgery, or when you sent them a letter, or maybe phone called them. They're long gone now, and actually this has to become more of the norm. I also want to do a bit more direct democracy in that sense, about actually having more meaningful consultations and opinion gathering from residents. I don't know everything. I wouldn't pretend I do. I hope I'm not arrogant enough to think I am in that sense. And actually, you know your community probably better than I do, and I really hope that actually we can figure out more additional ways for us to work together to help all of our communities. Yeah, Karen, I think I would keep this. I think I'm going to keep the Ask Pauls, but I am very I think I'm very conscious that actually I need to have a system of engagement that meets everybody's needs, and so that will be still some form of Ask Paul Live. That will be some form of hybrid community meetings where people can come together, like a virtual coffee morning. It will be looking at designing, this is really geeky stuff now, looking at designing interactive digital leaflets. I'm rebuilding my website at the moment, so I think this is highlighted to me that actually we need to engage better with you as the people we are elected ultimately to represent, and we can do it better than we have been doing. Let's see if there's any other questions. Let's have a look. Not that I can see of. So no, not got any more questions that have come through to me. So has anyone got any other questions or any feedback, anything they're worried about in the community, any ideas for me about you know, what you think my priorities should be. You know, I'm literally open-minded here in terms of actually, is there something I could be doing that is better? You know, is there a different way you want me to communicate? Is there a different way you want me to approach problems or give feedback, etc.? So, you know, while I'm not got any questions, please feel free to give me some feedback on trying to do things better. Because otherwise you're going to be looking at me and me sofa for the next 14 minutes, which probably might be a little more exciting than hearing me talk. One thing I do need is a haircut, quite clearly. Don't know about any of you, but I'm certainly getting lockdown hair. So any other questions or comments? Let's have a look. WhatsApp. Let's have a look. My priority is spending time with family. Do you know what? You're actually right, and I'm going to be doing a bit of self-reflection here. I don't spend enough time with my family, if I'm completely honest. I am a bit addicted to my role, and I think I need to reflect on that actually quite a lot. And I think my work-life balance is probably not the best, and I could probably do it better. And I think it's always sensible to be self-aware about those things. So yeah, you're right, my priority should be spending some time with my family, and I don't do enough of that. So yeah, I'll take that one as decent feedback. Thank you, Sarah. I like to engage. It's my job, and I think it's one of my frustrations during this period has been that I've been stuck at home. I like to engage, I like to go to coffee mornings, I like to speak to people, and I like people to challenge me. And it's been really frustrating not having that challenge and those ideas to try and formulate how we do things better in this community. So yeah, this is great, but I'm not going to lie, I'm going to enjoy having a degree of normality where I'm a bit more challenged. Yeah, cheers, Brenda. I'm obviously trying to do my best. I'm glad you like the idea of a video residence meeting. It's something I'm certainly gonna be looking to try and get done sooner rather than later. Actually, on a practical point, I think there's two benefits, well, three benefits to it actually. One, it's more engagement when we do have them. Two, you can do them at different times, so essentially you could have your standard one, and then you could do, if you will, another one at a later date. So I could do one in the evening, one in midday, so you get to different people. And actually I think there's a review of it, so people can actually go back to stuff that weren't able to attend either. So I'm quite eager for that, because I actually think it just opens up the democratic process a lot more. Cheers, Innocent. I try my best. I've not always got the answer, but again, I think it's only right and fair that we, as politicians, try and find better ways of engaging. And look, I'm always up for questions, and I'm always up for being challenged. And you know, I think I've said this to a few of you before when we've been in face-to-face meetings. The best meetings I like are meetings when we're told what we're not doing right, because I want to be in a position as a community where you feel you can go to me and go, that's not right, what you're going to do about it. And if we ever get to the point where you feel that there's no point in asking me questions or challenging me, then it's time for me to go. Because actually that trust, that willingness to challenge is absolutely vital to do the job that I do. So yeah, please do keep challenging me. If we ever get to the point that you don't, I know it's my time to step down and step aside. Other than that, we've got about another 10 minutes. So anyone got any brilliant ideas, or does anyone want to share something they've done that's kept them sane during this period, or anything they think they would like to change after this? And, you know, we've got like 10 minutes now for that. because again, no one's asking me any pertinent questions, as it were. So, you know, unless you all want to call it quits and we all go 10 minutes early, it's completely down to you guys. Let's have a look at any other comments. Oh no, thank you, Nicola. Again, I do try my best with these things. Let's have a look. Okay, yeah, just got one more question through actually, and this has been a particular problem. So, as some of you will be aware, the council is beginning a soft rollout of, for those people that are isolating, shopping, effectively. So essentially, they ring us up, they tell us what they want from the supermarket. They've got the ability to pay, so they pay. We go and pick it up. But the major supermarkets don't necessarily have a wide range of specialty foods, and by that I mean things like halal, etc. So particularly for the communities on Beeston Hill, but obviously those who, for example, need halal meat, who live across the city. The council is now looking at other suppliers, so that basically we can issue vouchers and actually you can still go get those specialities, etc. Because I think that's actually a really, really important thing, particularly now that we're in the middle of Ramadan, to make sure people got access to that. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sarah. Libraries are open online. People can register for e-books and magazines. I think it's been a really good thing for the council in one sense, because we've really looked at how we do a lot more engagement online. But we then need to, when we do get back to normality, not to do stuff online. We still need to do stuff face to face. Cheers, Paul. I always like having a bit weird when you're saying cheers to me, Paul, and I'm saying cheers back to you, Paul. So double cheers, Paul. Where's Peggy? Peggy is having a walk at the moment with one of my housemates. So she's busy out sniffing the wonders of Hunslet. Let's have a look at anything else. Okay, just another question that's come through on. Yeah, so people who live in Hunslet Cllr will know about this a bit more. So, where the Hunslet and Riverside Ward and Middleton Ward meet, there's a bridge. That bridge goes on to Pepper Road from Middleton Road, and quite frankly, it's a speedway, and there's a poor person that has had their wall crashed into at least a dozen plus times. We put in a raised curb to try and deflect the cars from crashing into it, etc. And a whole variety of other things. Basically, the road's a nightmare to cross because of that. So this hasn't been approved yet. It still requires initially the approval of the executive member for climate change and transport and planning. If it gets that initial approval, it will then go to public consultation. But we, after a lot of work, have found out a way to put a managed crossing point there and some additional road calming. Assuming that all gets signed off, I'm hoping it means that a really big long-term ask for that part of Hunslet is that they will have a crossing point and additional road calming to try and slow it down. We are in the middle of negotiating whether or not we can get road calming further down Pepper Road towards Sussex Avenue to meet up to the new road restriction, parking restrictions we're planning for Sussex Avenue to Low Road. So that is a work in progress. I'm quite confident the executive member will approve the initial plans, and then we'll go to the formal public consultation. Other than that, it's about 5 minutes left, so what I'll do is I'm probably going to close up shop now. I'd just like to really thank everyone who's spent time listening to me witter on a little bit. I hope it's been informative and useful. If you do have any feedback for me, please don't hesitate to give it. I am really keen to understand which ways you want us to engage with you. Are there things we're not doing right? Are there things we could be doing better? So please keep sending me that feedback, because I find it really, really useful. And again, if you do have any other concerns, I'm still at work. But I am going to take Michael's feedback and probably do a bit more prioritisation of family, because I perhaps I'm a bit too eager to answer all of your Facebook comments at 9 o'clock at night. But I do want to make sure I continue to be available for you and the community when it's needed. So please do keep feeding back. Other than that, I wish you an absolutely wonderful weekend. I hope you and your family are staying safe and well, and I'll speak to you next week on the next live Q&A. Thank you and good weekend. Good night and a good weekend. Bye.